Hello there. In part 2, I want to begin talking about positive and negative stressors. That's those factors that trigger stress. Because don't forget, stress is a response we give to our environment, we give to stimuli, we give to situations that come at us. Some of these situations may be positive, some of them may be perceived as negative. So ultimately it boils down to our perception. Now I just want to deal with this myth that we often entertain, that if something is stressful, then it's negative. In other words, something that is positive can never be a factor for stress. I gave an example in the first clip about how a lot of positive things that came my way on my birthday became overwhelming, and I found it very difficult to respond because the expectation I felt loved ones were placing on me, it was something that I could not cope with. Now, it does not mean they intended it that way, but it's just how I responded. And sometimes we find ourselves in situations where maybe we compliment somebody and the person suddenly responds and says, "Now, what do you want from me?" In other words, they're trying to see what's the motive behind the compliment. That, for me, is an illustration, a good illustration of this. The other thing I want to say is, look at something like in fame, in pop culture. You would expect that somebody who is highly successful, makes lots of money, you would expect that the situation is going to bring the best out of them. On the contrary, what happens is fame usually leads to addiction in some people. That is, it leads to a lot of dependency, substance misuse, dependency. It leads to different problems. It brings the worst out of some people. On the other hand, history has got accounts of people who were wartime prisoners of war. We've got John McCain, the senator in America. We've got John Kerry, who was involved in the Vietnam War, now a very well-known senator and at one time a presidential candidate for America. We've got stories about Nelson Mandela, who was a prisoner under the apartheid regime, and that experience seemed to have shaped and brought out exceptional leadership qualities in him. And then it goes on and on and on. We've got examples of people, on the other hand, who experience a lot of goodness, experience a lot of positive situations, and then they end up broke, they ended up distressed, they ended up in desperate conditions, desperate situations. And so these are just illustrations to the fact that positive situations could result in maybe not so positive outcomes, whereas negative situations could result in positive outcomes. Now, what is this element in us? How do we handle what comes at us? How do we handle our positive experiences so that they lead on to further positive experience, further positive outcomes? How do we handle negative experiences and they also lead to positive outcomes? And these are some of the questions I want to address in subsequent clips.